Good evening, everyone. And we are here live at the newly opened CAU Innovation Lounge, sponsored by Dell Technologies and the Home Depot here on the campus of Clark Atlanta University. I want to welcome everyone to our 2021 Professional Development Series webinar. Our webinar over these past 2 years has featured alums of the institution, special guests, and speakers that are sourced from right here in Atlanta and across the globe. And today we have an outstanding team to speak to you. I look forward to this conversation. I thank everyone, our students, alumni, faculty members, and friends who are joining us this evening. As I just want to highlight as a point of privilege that this year we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the founding of the Atlanta University Graduate School of Business Administration. This is a year-long celebration that started about a month ago and will run throughout the year. At its founding, just for historical perspective, at its founding, the School of Business here was the only graduate school of business for African Americans, the first. So 75 years hence, we are still doing what we started at that time. We are proud to let everyone here know that as you look around the horizon of business professionals, if they are seasoned, chances are they went through our school. So we have a legacy that is so rich, and where we are meeting from today gives us an opportunity to extend that legacy. And our thanks to Dell Technologies and the Home Depot for sponsoring the putting together of this Innovation Lounge, which is expected to give students the opportunity to engage and to create and to eventually be able to sit as our guests do today and speak to us about their ventures. Welcome this evening. I am going to turn over our programming to Ms. Foster, who is going to introduce our panelists as well as our moderator, and we will take it from there. Thank you everyone for being here.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Kiza Foster. I am the Assistant Vice President for Institutional Advancement here at Clark Atlanta University. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel this evening. We have Ms. Tiffany McLennan, who is the Regional Sales Director for Dell. She is joining us today, and Dell is one of our corporate partners, and we're so happy to have her here moderating this session this evening. Our panelists are Joey Womack. He is the founder and CEO of Give Goody Nation, a national nonprofit that is closing the relationship gap for the tech-focused social entrepreneurs and diverse founders. He is the founder and CEO of Amplify for Good, a mission-driven agency that uses rapid problem solving to help large companies, nonprofits, and government agencies create social impact. We also have Jasmine Crowe. She is an award-winning social entrepreneur, children's book author, TEDx speaker, and a leader who is working to make the world a better place and create awareness about social economic issues of today, including climate change, food waste, and hunger. She is the CEO of Goodr, and their mission is to feed more and waste less. Under Jasmine's leadership, Goodr has redirected over 20 million pounds of surplus food from event centers, airports, businesses, to people who are food insecure. So welcome to our panel today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm just super excited to be in this room with some amazing innovators and entrepreneurs like yourself, Jasmine and Joey. Jasmine, we'll start with you. Talk to us a little bit about you, your backstory, and Gooder.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to be here and just seeing this all come to life. I remember actually in February of 2020, being part of a coalition with Dell for Black History Month and kind of speaking this into existence. So it feels great to be here. My background really is in the social impact space. When I graduated college, I first thought I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And so I was working for the Phoenix Suns. I moved from North Carolina to Phoenix where my parents were. And as I was working for the Suns in sales with one day these big ambitions to be a sports broadcaster, I really fell in love with the community relations side of the team. I used to love Steve Nash and Boris Diaw. I'm definitely aging myself. Steve Nash is now a coach, but he used to be a player and he used to do, I would work with the team to do different things in the community. The Super Bowl came to Phoenix in 2008 and I registered to be a minority supplier, which was really easy to do because Arizona is less than 2% African American, so not a lot of Black businesses there. But I registered as like a PR and event planner, and I started working first with Ray Lewis and Hines Ward on their football camps. And I just think that ignited a passion in me, and I spun off a consultancy where I helped celebrities start and manage and run their nonprofits for almost 10 years before I started Gooder. And I would say to my clients, people that are standing in line for a turkey in November are probably hungry in April too. And I think a lot of times it just didn't really resonate with them because they were athletes, they were entertainers, and that was their first goal. And so I drove through downtown Atlanta. I saw hundreds of people that were living on the streets. And it was really the first time I had ever seen that in a city I lived in, other than visiting LA and seeing Skid Row. And I just decided I wanted to do something. And so I posted it on Facebook. I'm going to start feeding. And I started doing it. And so it was called BCG Sunday Soul. And I did that for about 3.5 years until a video of my work actually went viral on Facebook. And I woke up one morning to millions of views, thousands of friend requests, all these comments. And as I was reading through the comments, one of the reoccurring questions people kept asking was, who donated the food? And the truth was nobody. I was couponing, price matching, cooking all this food myself. And so like many of us, I went to Google, what happens to extra food? How can I get food donations? And I fell into this rabbit hole of food waste. And I was just blown away with how much food was going to waste while so many people were going hungry. And this was in 2016. And so I had this idea and I was floating it around early 2016, like February, March. And people were like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think that'll scale. And I learned a friend of mine was going hungry. And I just decided I wanted to do this. I had returned from a mission trip to Haiti and I was just seeing so many signs. And so actually randomly, Joey was doing Goodie Nation at the time. I had previously been a judge for him at another, hackathon. I can't remember what the cause was then, but it was nonprofits for certain. And I just remember hitting up Joey and I was like, I've got this idea. And I entered in his hackathon and as a team of one. And from that just had a clickable prototype that I used for an entire year before I launched Gooder, just to enter pitch competitions. So a real long journey to get here. And I still think we're at the beginning of a long journey ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing just to see the community impact. And then same question for you, Joey. I mean, you're doing so much as well. What's your journey? Talk to us a little bit about your organizations as well.
So I don't know where to start, but that being said, so I totally forgot, Jasmine, that you started out as a judge.
Yeah, you got to remember that.
The interesting part, it's so many hackathons and stuff like that. I was very intentional about building those judging panels. And I totally forgot that happened. Man, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm a natural kind of community builder, ecosystem developer. I get it through genetics. I'm not going to go too much into my background, but I'm originally from Alabama. Unfortunately, I didn't go to Clark Atlanta. I went to Florida A&M University, where I majored in business, accounting to be specific, after my father. And I had no idea what it took to become an entrepreneur. I had no intention to even become an entrepreneur, but I was that kid growing up that organized all the football, basketball games in the neighborhood. I would always bring people together. Make a super long story short, my sophomore year, I was on internship. So I was on internship in New York and spring semester, right? So in the spring, school is cracking. HBCUs, things are cracking. You have people are crossing, you have SGA elections, at FAMU's a lot of parties and stuff. Graduations. And so I'm in New York, I'm living in Harlem. I get connected to some cats at Columbia. These guys are freshmen. Again, I'm a sophomore. 5 guys that played football. They're all Black. Their names started with J. All of them. Jeff, John, Jay, something like that. And so I was like the 6th J, fell in with that crew. There's a backstory there, but I'll tell you about that later. I also got connected with some cats down at NYU, right? And they had a Black History Month program. So I go down to NYU. And kind of in the interim, before I kind of go into that part of it, I would always call back. So I'm going to take myself even more than you. I will use calling cards to call my friends down in Tallahassee, like, hey guys, how's it going down there? Y'all having fun? They're like, yeah, we kicking it, tons of fun. You're up in New York, you're hanging out with cats at Columbia, NYU, must not be any fun. I'm like, you know what? They actually have fun, but in a different way, right? Tallahassee, small city, college town, New York City, big city, no college town, right? But they have fun in a different way. So I go down to NYU for this Black History Month program. I leave work, and though I commit to going to the event, something was like, I was like, I don't really want to go. I'm tired, how you are after work. Something says, go to the event. And if anyone has ever had that feeling before, something good normally happens, right? Yeah. So I go down to the event, and I walk in there, there's like 3 people in the audience. I'm like, come on, it's a waste of my time. But there's 3 panelists. One of the panelists is DJ D Nice. Now I'm familiar with this cat growing up. Like, my name is D Nice. He's one of my favorite rappers. And he's talking about how he transitioned from becoming a rapper to becoming a website designer. And so I fall in love. I go and talk to him after the event, right? He gives me some advice about launching a website. I immediately go back uptown or catch a train back uptown and start working on this idea for a website. Now, again, this is like spring 1999. The website ends up becoming blackcollegeexperience.com. I launch it when school starts the fall of 1999. I have people all over the country go on the website. I have correspondence at several different schools. And then I start pledging, and so it all goes away, right? And so I go away for a few months and stuff like that. Super long story short, I launched my second startup coming out of business school one day. I'll save that story for another time. But I launched my first actual tech startup that made money called Digital Guest List. My last year as a graduate student at Florida A&M, and did it full time after graduating, built it full time. Built it to like top 5 in the industry. But for the past 10 or 12 years, I've been focused on building community for social entrepreneurs and diverse founders here in Atlanta. Right now, Goody Nation is focused on what we call the relationship gap. So in many cases, and I'll stop here, the story around entrepreneurs in the media oftentimes is around getting investment capital for them. Huge problem. But we've all heard phrases kind of passed down throughout the ages, like your network is your net worth. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And so in my TEDx talk, I talk about how the question we should be asking ourselves are, who is the who and stuff like that. And so what I've come to realize, and what I believe, is that relationships drive everything else. It leads to capital, investment capital, but it also leads to things like customers. It leads to things like advice on how to become a better CEO. It leads to things like hiring the best people on your team to help your company scale. It also leads to other things like less stress as a founder and stuff like that. And so that's what we're focused on at Goody Nation. We have about 300 founders in our program from across the country, like 20 different states, three other countries besides the US. And by the end of next year, maybe around this time, we should be at like 500.
That's amazing. So you hinted on it earlier about So Dell Technologies did a roundtable right before the pandemic. And I know you participated in that, where we brought our community leaders together, where we wanted to really talk about, okay, how can we empower HBCU students, give them the right tools so that they can see whether they go into entrepreneurship or advancing into their careers. And you pointed out, hey, you all need to bring an innovation lounge to the campuses so more and more students can come together, create that ecosystem. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of creating spaces like this.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and beyond that, I also connected Dell with Joey to make sure that beyond just having the innovation lab, that there was some kind of programming here, because people don't know what they don't know, right? So we could talk about innovation and STEM, and I even feel like I didn't know about it. I think before I got into, I always laugh, and Joey will appreciate this. When I joined Goody Nation and we were at Atlanta Tech Village, and they were like, we're gonna, you guys are gonna create an MVP. I honestly thought that meant most valuable player, because I was a sports person.
Right.
I did not know about tech. So I was like, that's gonna be me. I'm gonna have to be the MVP. I'm a team of one. Literally, that's just how little I knew. So if we want to talk about getting our kids, our students, should I say, our young people in jobs with tech companies like Dell, creating their own digital guest list, they have to get, I guess, access and that experience. And it's just not always there. I think prior to when this roundtable took place, this was pre-George Floyd, this was pre-pandemic. So this is pre all this talks about racial equity. But so it was really just like the idea of like, we've got to get people in the room, we've got to educate them on all the opportunities that are out there. And so that they're not even vocabulary deficient like I was when I went into Goody Nation, which was really a welcoming space. And I always think like, thank God I was not that ignorant, if you will, in like a larger space that wasn't as forgiving with someone like Joey, who I already knew. And no one knew. I didn't say MVP, like most valuable player, out loud, but that's definitely what I was thinking. And so as I started to see it all come together, I think a lot of times people just need the education and the knowledge of what's available and what's there. And so and it is, to what Joey says, creating ecosystem and creating spaces is where a lot of that happens. Sometimes people just need, new areas and new locations, scenery just can start the whole concept of changing their minds and showing them new ideas. So I think that's kind of really what the idea was. And I'm super excited to see that it actually was built. That's really what it was, just giving people that opportunity.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about, pledging and different things of that nature. And so when we look at students, they're involved in different campus organizations, they're volunteering. And it's amazing to see that they're innovating in their dorm rooms, in their apartments, and there's several different pockets of this happening across the campus. So talk to us a little bit about how creating those opportunities really are the same thing as launching your company.
Yeah, so here's the thing, like, to be clear, as a people, we are entrepreneurs, we are innovative. That's how we survive in this country. So we knew this, we true to this, my friend Natalie Cofield will say. And so when it comes to launching something, it's all about your ability to go from a vision in your head to something tangible, right? And so it has nothing to do around ownership. And to your point, like when you're in an organization on campus, and you have to launch a volunteer day, or you have to do a fundraising event, those are all things that you can get really good at, because you're getting a lot of experience going from idea to pilot. And the interesting thing that I've learned in talking with many diverse entrepreneurs, particularly Black entrepreneurs, is that they don't leverage their past experience when talking about the new idea that they're working on right now. So in many cases, I think Jasmine, can back this up. When you're making a presentation, pitch competition, or maybe talking to investors, they're going to ask you, why are you so? What experience do you have that makes you well positioned to solve this problem? And so, for context, I was talking with an entrepreneur a few weeks ago, and they were in the retail space. Her idea was in the retail space, but she had like 6 years of working in retail, like Target and Banana Republic and stuff like that. She never once brought that up, because in many cases, she didn't think it was relevant to what she's working on now. Like, yo, you have 6 years. of insight into this space that makes you well positioned to solve the problem. And so going back to students, you can look at the jobs you may have in high school and in college. You can look at the class projects you have. You can look at the organizations you're a part of and you're helping to launch these ideas, like all that's relevant experience that you can use moving forward, whether it's launching your own company or, you know, doing something, working for a larger company as well.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. And talk about connections, right? How you all connected, and students hear it all the time, that what they do here, their time here matters, right? The connections that they're building, it matters. So how important was it for you to finally get connected to somebody like Joey who could help propel you to that next?
I mean, it was critical, you know, and I would just say that the connections also start here in college, you know, and it starts with the professors. I recently was fortunate enough, I'm also an HBCU alumna, and I actually got to give the commencement speech at my school. Like, that was really crazy to me, to the undergraduate class, to be able to come back 15 years after I graduated and deliver the commencement speech. It all was because I kept the connection strong with my school. So I stayed in contact with professors throughout the years. Anytime I was doing something, I always would call the school and say, like, listen, I've got this TV show. Can I do a premiere at this school? I'm looking for interns. Can you guys connect me to students that would want to intern with me? I always continue to go back. And I think that's why the opportunity came, that they were like, would you be the commencement speaker? And I was shocked. At first, I thought they were going to have me be the commencement speaker, maybe for like, I don't know, like the business school. I thought all the programs were going to be like, essentially, I don't know. I thought they were going to be like, all the classes were going to be broken up, you know? So I was like, maybe this is for the pandemic, but it was 100% the whole school. But yeah, these connections are critical. They're extremely critical. The people that you meet now are going to be the ones who can help you get to the next level. And I would say, you know, with Joey, sometimes it's about just answering the call. Like Joey asked, could I be a judge at the session? That was the first time I really kind of learned about Goody Nation. And then because of me learning about that, I was like, okay, I have this idea now. I can take this back to Goody Nation and try and get involved. And so that's where you just never meet anybody by happenstance. And even with what Joey was saying, when he kind of had an idea, like a feeling like his intuition was telling him he needed to go to that event, and he ends up meeting DJ D Nice, making up a whole, you know, company from it. I think that's why it's connections, and you never know where those doors will lead you to. And I have had people that I met, you know, I mean, still, even people that are like, I heard you talking, I heard you pitching at Goody Nation, or I heard you in the Miller Lite Tap the Future pitch competition. These are 4 years ago, sometimes 5 years ago, who will just sometimes reach out and say, I'm at this new company, or I told them about Gooder, or would you be willing to come and present to me? I mean, that's how it happens. Our first customer ever came from social media, who was following Goody Nation, and basically an administrative assistant. So also too, no one is ever don't think that you always just have to meet the president of the company. Sometimes you meet someone at the company who gets you to the president. And our first customer ever was Turner Broadcasting Systems. Before we ever had technology, I used to go pick up the food myself. The chef would text me and call me, I would go pick it up and prove out the model. And that came from an administrative and executive assistant who got all the other executive assistants who typically do all the lunch and food ordering for all of Turner, and brought me to do a presentation. And that was all just like, again, just small connections. So I think it's important. I think a lot of times people, and I have to do that a lot of times students or people are like, oh, I just want to meet with Jasmine, or is Jasmine available? And a lot of times I'm like, listen, talk to other people. And even, you know, I have to tell myself that sometimes when I'm raising money or I'm looking for investors, I'm like, gosh, I really just want to talk to a partner. But a lot of times I'm like, Jasmine, sometimes you got to talk to an analyst who's going to take you into the partner. Like, you know, we have to get over this idea of like, we only want to be connected to the big people, because you never know who those little people will be. And I always think of myself as, at one time, being a little person. I still think I'm a little person now, but you know, I think like that. And there are people who sometimes were kind of mean to me when I was just coming up, who I don't think ever thought, you know, the idea would go anywhere, it would never be successful. And so they kind of like brushed me off. And I have a lot of those people who I remember that they treated me really wrong, but now will come back and be like, how's it going? I've been such a fan. I've been seeing you do everything. I'm like, Not really, but you
Yeah.
know, again, just treat people how you want to be treated and connect with everybody. Don't think it's just the title, because people's titles change and their positions change and the companies they work for change. So just be open to new connections.
That's so good. That is so good. So when we talk about, connections, what would you say to a student who has their plan? They want to meet Jasmine, they want to meet a Joey, right? What would they need in order to set that next meeting up to propel their business? They feel like, hey, I have my plan. What's next for me at this point? I don't have funding. Maybe I don't have access to the right people. How do you keep an individual who is at that stage motivated to continue to push for their business?
I mean, what gets me? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What gets me interested in meeting with students? So bottom line for me, I have this flaw. I have this flaw where like I'm a big believer in potential, which means like I believe in like everything. Right. So as long as someone can show me like
And I don't know if that's a flaw. I think that's a good thing.
I mean, yeah, it's good, but it's also bad because that means like I literally have to probably take like every meeting and stuff. But as long as a student can, for me, it's about, and I'll get back to how the student can kind of talk about their next step. But for me, it's about showing, that you have a lot of potential and stuff like that. And again, I'm a big believer that everybody has a place in this world that can make an impact, their life matters, and that what they can do is awesome. And so like tactically, how you're making a connection is really based on the origin story. Again, it does go back to relationships. And again, if you can draw a line between, why you're interested in the work and how you've really been working on it the entire life, that's interesting to me. There's a person on our team, Kathleen Curry, that says that entrepreneurs think that they're solving problems for their customers, because it's a common thing that's taught. It's not about your idea, it's about a solution. You're creating a solution to a problem. And that is absolutely true. But she says in reality, what we're actually doing when we're coming up with something new and valuable, something innovative, we're not necessarily solving the problem. We're building an expression about who we are as a human being. So when you think about it through those terms, right, the company that you're building, the idea that you're having is an expression about who you are as a human. And so for me as a coach, as a mentor, whatever, I want to get to know the human being. And if I can help that human being reach their potential, that gets me interested. And so on the flip side for a student is, really understanding who they are as a human, looking back on all the things they've done across their life. And then more importantly, when they say like, hey, I have an idea, have the drive and the willingness to actually move forward. It's nothing like when you're talking to it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are. You talk to me, let's say like on Monday, and cool, I learned about your idea, blah, 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 whatever. And, a month later, you come back and you say like, I've done X, Y, and Z since the last time we talked. I can say a lot of great things about Jasmine, but what I can tell you is every single time we talked, she was moving forward and rapidly. I remember coming out of that ideation lab, and before we did the first actual hackathon, I think you had rescued like 1,000 pounds of food.
Yeah.
And like
I rescued food at the event.
At the event, yeah.
So I was like, listen, this is the idea that y'all got all this pizza left over. I'm gonna take it, and I took it downtown.
Progress,
Yeah.
traction,
Yeah.
and I think it was 3-4 weeks, maybe something along those lines. So I knew then. She was already awesome, but I knew whatever was going to come next, like she was going to absolutely crush it because she was always moving forward. So as a student, if you could show your ability to make stuff happen and then move forward in some way, shape, or form, that's how you get good meetings. That's how you build great relationships with dope people. And then at the end of the day, you'll be successful.
So what was your driving factor? Was it just that you're just passionate about social impact?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I was feeding people out of my kitchen in my 1-bedroom apartment. And I remember sometimes coming to the hackathons and like telling Joey, like, listen, I'm having on my uniform. There's actually a picture of me at one of the hackathon judging sessions in my apron from like feeding literally around this time, Thanksgiving time, around 2016 is when I started working on this. But, I just got out of a really tough relationship and I was starting over, so I really was starting from nothing. And I remember that relationship was a really bad one. And I'm pretty sure, all young women, listening to me at some point, I would hope not, may go through a bad relationship. And I remember praying and just saying like, God, just get me out of this relationship. I don't care if I leave with nothing. And listen, careful what you pray for, because I definitely left with nothing. And, I started from nothing to kind of start over. So I think that level of just that drive, like this is, it was like all bets on me at the time. Like I was telling my parents, my dad was like, you got to go get a job. You got to go get a job. Because before that, I had been an entrepreneur for over a decade. I mean, I had really been doing my own thing for a long time. So it was a struggle. Like now I was trying to really make this work. I was placing all bets on gooder. I was still working with celebrities, but it was very seasonal. I'm always busy around Thanksgiving, Christmas, and back to school. And that was it. Other than that, celebrities are being celebrities. And so there was just a drive that I just had to make it. Like I just, I don't think I had another option. And I also didn't have, the resources as well. Like, so many people, I remember getting into Techstars and, I didn't get in the first time, I still applied again. Like, and I think that's another thing too. It wasn't always easy. I think a lot of people just think, oh, she just like shut up. But it was like, I had a lot of rejection, a lot of things that didn't happen for me. I applied for Techstars Atlanta. I didn't get in because they were like, I didn't have the team. Then I was like, oh my God, I got to find a team. I'm like, with a poster on the side of the road, like, please be my co-founder, be my team. End up getting a lot of people on my team that weren't good for me, that weren't really helping the company. And just really came back into Techstars, applied again, got in. And I remember going in and I was the only Black female, and they take 10 founders or 10 companies, should you say, in every class. So I was the only Black female. There's only 2 females, 1 white female, 1 me, all other males. And like so many of them had raised so much money coming in the door. Like so, there was a group, I think they're pretty successful now. They've raised like Series B. So they've raised some good capital, but they had raised like $750,000 from like friends and family. And I was like, what? No website, no nothing. And they were like, and I remember asking him like, how did you guys raise the money? He literally said to me, for like living expenses. So like we could pay ourselves. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, like I am paying like $800 a month in Southwest Atlanta without a car. Joey had to like give me money via PayPal one time just to Uber back and forth to the hackathons, eating ramen noodles. And I'm just thinking like they raised $750,000 just from friends and family, just because there were people that believed in their idea, and it just was, I think that, and I also will say a lot of the naysayers, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to just prove you guys wrong. Because I mean, the fact that so many people are like, I don't even think, even in some of the hackathons, right? Because the way the hackathons would work is like, you have to pitch your idea and then people join your team. There were definitely people that were like, I don't know what she's doing. I'm not joining that team. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I had to start perfecting how I delivered it. I had to overcome, my fear of public speaking, which people think is so crazy to hear now, but I'm pretty sure Joey can speak to you. I had a really big fear, and I had to really like, you're gonna have to pitch this idea to a lot of people in front of a lot of people. And I practiced. And I remember one time when we were getting ready for the demo day, I remember Joey said something like, you guys need to practice 100 times a day. Like, I'm serious. Like, y'all need to practice this at least 100. I think he said 100 times. He may not have said 100 times a day. I was practicing 100 times a day. Like, so no, but he might have said 100 times. I think I heard 100 times a day. And so I would make myself, before I went to bed, I would make myself practice 10 times, and I had to get it right. And if I got to like the last, 10, 15 seconds and I got it wrong, I would make myself start over again. And so like that level of, I had to just make myself do it, and I would, this is in 2017. So this was like around the time Future's Mask Off, and Kendrick Lamar's Be Humble. Those are like the big songs. So I would kind of practice my pitch almost as if I was a rapper to those songs. And now I don't even like those songs anymore because I listen to them so much. But I would know when the second kind of verse of Kendrick Lamar's song came on that it was time for me to start wrapping up my pitch. Oh, wow. And, it just was, it's sacrifice. So a lot of times when I see young people just thinking it's going to be so easy, or it's just, I think to Joey's point, the media makes it seem like, oh, this, they raised $50 million. They, they're Series B, Series A, like all that celebration comes and people really forget behind that. There's a lot of hard, like lonely nights as founders. And I would say across the board, I think for Black founders, it's still a lot harder, especially Black women founders. But even in talking to other founders, I think the founder's journey is tough. I don't think any one founder has just it's always been easy. I'm not gonna say that. There's definitely some who just, write this idea on the back of a napkin and people give them the money and it's just easy to go. But even I've talked to people that have sold their companies and I've been in panels and, sessions and I hear the most successful talking about how hard it's been. I was part of EY's Strategic Growth Forum over the weekend. And there was a founder, there was a panel from Thrive Market, Misfit Market, and Noom, the company, like it's Moon backwards. And probably combined, I think the moderator had said they had raised something like $4 billion between all three companies. And they had raised like $4 billion between them. Like one had raised 550 million. Another one had raised like, just big money. But they all were talking about how hard it was. Like the guy from Thrive Market was like, yeah, the first, 90 investors we met with were like, hell no, we're not doing that. They're crazy. That's not going to work. Same thing from Misfits Market. He was talking about being a son of Indian immigrant parents. The founder from Noom was like a neuroscientist. And, now his company is about to go public, but across the board, 3 men, all diverse, 1 white, 1 Indian, and 1 Asian. All of them were talking about struggling. And so in my mind, I'm like, y'all done raised $4 billion. Y'all are not struggling. Right. But they were all saying like how they had at times struggle. So I think that that's important to know. So it was important for me to know. Now my struggle was worse because I don't think they were ever eating ramen noodles, didn't have a car, like all that stuff. But I will say the struggle is real across the board. And it's if you were willing to go through the struggle, what will happen on the other end of that. And I think, now Gooder is almost at 50 employees. We have a fulfillment center. We got a new office. And I started out of my 1-bedroom apartment without a car. And I always talk about that. Now we have company cars and, our new office is in West Midtown and it's, almost like 20,000 square feet. It's wild to me that we can even go from a hackathon as a team of 1 to this space. And we're only going to grow from here. So it's just, be willing to get through the struggle because it will be there. And I think the rewards will come.
That's so important because a lot of people don't really talk about the downs of entrepreneurship and you kind of just think, okay, I have this idea and let me go. So this is really good to hear.
I always talk about it. I'm like, if you follow me on Twitter, like, listen, I'm going through a rough time, y'all pray for me because it's tough. There's still, even now, it was just announced today, we just signed our first multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal with Emory University. This is 5 years later, from when I started and just to see like Emory tweet that today, like we selected Gooder to help us go to zero waste. There's still days that are like hard, like that's a really great thing that's happening, but it's still hard to like raise funding and do all these things, even though I've done so much with so little. So it is important, I think, just to be vulnerable and let people know that it's not easy because you can see a really big announcement like that, but I think there was, I don't know if it was, there was a big analogy that said sometimes, I think it was a coach, I want to say Coach K, but it was probably someone else. We said sometimes like you win the shot, like you shoot the basket and your hand is still up in the air, like I made it. And at the rest of the game is already going, like people are already down on the other side of the court scoring, so it's never, you don't have time to like admire your shot and admire what happened. You got to keep on going. And so even though that announcement came today, I'm just kind of like, I gotta get Clark now, that's the idea next. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, you're always thinking. So I heard, you gotta be prepared. Rejection is not final. You've got to have a good team around you. What are some of the important pieces for you that like, hey, really propels you to keep going?
All that, belief, for me is belief. How about I just quickly tell the story of how I launched my actual company. So I was on interns. These things always start with internships. It's kind of weird, right?
Get an internship. That's a good thing for the Dell has some of the internships.
Dell.
Internships.
So I'm interning with forward, this is summer 2001, I believe. Anyway, there's an employee there that has an email group, sends out emails about events. It's like concerts downtown Detroit. He actually is giving away free passes, like a few concerts in exchange for people kind of replying back to the email. Big Yahoo group. So I'm like, like, I think we can do this at Florida A&M through the fraternity. So in the frat, I'm alpha. And so in the frat, like, I'm on the fundraising committee, the people that throw the parties, right? So I'm like, perfect, like 10,000 students, undergrad at FAMU. I started to realize like about 2,000 people would come to our events like all the time. So my thought process,
Well,
not at one time, but like there's a market about 2,000 that would come throughout the year.
Okay.
So my thought process was, what about the other 8,000? What are they doing? And so I'm thinking that they're upperclassmen, they come to school, they park in a different parking lot, and they go to class, they go back home. So I'm like, okay, we can email them about our events and then maybe they come out. So I'm thinking it's an awesome idea, easy, college campus, easy to get their email address. You walk around, just sign them up physically. I go back to school when school starts. I present the idea at the beginning of the semester to the fraternity. Hey guys, listen, we got a party coming up. We get a bunch of students' email address, offer like a few people to get in. Everyone else is gonna like reply back and like, they're gonna come and pay full price to the party. Like ROI is gonna be awesome. They're like, bad idea. Now to be clear, so Jasmine is a great speaker. She's like here. I'm like here when it comes to speaking.
I was definitely.
But back then, like I was not that public speaker. Like I would, even when I started Goody Nation, I would like have other people speak for me when I first started. Like I do not like public speaking. Even to this day, I don't necessarily love it. But I make the presentation. It probably wasn't the best one. It wasn't coherent and stuff like that. They say it's a bad idea. But here's the thing. As an entrepreneur, I'm like, I am a rebel with a cause. I do it anyway. I like run an MVP. I run a pilot by myself. I go with a clipboard, get like 35 people to sign up, put them in an email group, promise him to get them in free to the party, like the first 5 that responded. I would figure out a way to make it happen. I snuck them in, right? So I sent out the email, like 20 people responded. I got 5 in, I snuck them into the event, but 15 other people paid. So like the ROI from this is really, really high. So the next frat meeting, I come back and say, hey guys, listen, you know what? I know you said don't do it. I did it anyway. We made a lot of money off this small test of 35 people. Let's continue to do it, get 2, 3, 4,000 people to sign up. They're like, bad idea. We're not doing it. I'm like, gotcha. You know what? I'm about to go back and start focusing on my schoolwork. Peace out. Y'all talk to me later. So fast forward 6 months, leaving business school, third Thursday in March, because I'd already come back to spring break in Miami. And so I'm coming out of class. I go into my car in the School of Business parking lot, have a Honda Accord. The radio is off and the CD player is off. I put the car in reverse. About halfway out of the parking spot, not the parking deck, but the parking spot, I hear a voice in my left ear that says, do it, like a loud whisper. Loud whisper. So you think back to those scary movies where somebody's in the back seat. I'm thinking one of my friends is pranking me. So I literally stop the car, get out and look in the back seat. There's nothing there. Now, again, the radio, CD player, again, dating myself, CD player. CD player is off. I knew exactly what it was. It was to create, the idea that I had pitched 6 months earlier. I go home on my Dell laptop, by the way, and then write the business plan for what turns into digital guest lists. I tell this story for several reasons. One, horrible with pitching. People told me no, even with evidence. As entrepreneurs, as innovators, we have to be a little bit rebellious and just have this drive to do it. 2, I was obedient. Once I heard the voice that said, do it, no more, there was no question. I just did it. And I followed that voice ever since to get me where I am right now. So those are kind of some of the things that I think it takes for entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, but people that are innovative, right? You're doing something that's new, it's valuable. You're walking into the dark forest with no lights, with absolutely no guide, and you've got to be able to trust something. At minimum, you have to be able to trust yourself. And so,
No, it's good. So
I love that.
yes, that's good. So for clarification, because I'm still thinking MVP is most valuable player. What is MVP?
So MVP stands for minimum viable product. So basically the most simple version of your idea that you could launch in order to learn what you need to learn about the assumptions that you have around the idea. It's actually an interesting concept. I mean, not to go too deep into it, but most people, their idea of a very simple idea is like 2 or 3 features. When in reality, you probably need like half of a feature to really understand what's really happening. Like even with Gooder, I'm sure when you launch, what you're doing right now is not exactly the same.
No, not at all, yeah.
And so what Jasmine, again, that's not trying to speak for her, but she's learned along the way. She probably had some assumptions when she first started that ended up not being correct, which is perfectly okay. And you're right, your objective when you start something new, again, I'm not trying to use entrepreneurship for a reason. Your objective is to learn as quickly as possible based on actual evidence. And you can only do that when your product is simple. Said a completely different way and put it in academic terms, it's a very simple science experiment with one variable.
That's good. So when you had that one variable, how did you scale? What was your decision factor on, okay, this is good, but it's not great?
I think you learn from your customers. So you're going to have to do a lot of customer discovery. So what you think is the end all be all is different. I think one of the things that I never captured early on in my idea was the idea that it could also be a data play. I think I was just kind of like, oh, the businesses have extra food. They can request to pick up, like we would be a reverse Uber Eats, and then we would donate it to nonprofits on their behalf. What I started to see early on with Turner is he would text me what he was donating or like how many pans of stuff. Then I kind of was able to come back to him and I said, Chef Ryan, the number one thing you guys donate is pork. I don't think people are eating pork anymore. And it really was at a time where people were starting to go vegan. And, it just was like this is again, almost 5 years ago, where the ideas of what we were eating was starting to change. And so then I started thinking like, okay, we've got to be able to categorize this. Like I've got to be able to show them what's going to waste the most. Also, the tax savings, like being able to show them item for item. So it wasn't like just like saying, hey, I've got 20 pans of pork. Like they had to actually assign a value to them so that they can really understand the value that they're donating and get a deduction for it. So there was a lot that I learned. I mean, originally my minimum idea was you have food, request to pick up, I'll pick it up and donate it to a nonprofit. Now it's way different. It's much more data driven. We convert all of the poundage to sustainability outcomes. That wasn't in the story in the beginning. I think I talked about food waste and how much food waste there was, but not about the sustainability reports that we could derive from this data that customers would enter. So I think a lot of it changes, and I think it still changes till this day. I think we are constantly, one of the things we've done now at Gooder is we started realizing as customers were donating food, first we just started with edible food, then we started non-edible food where we would compost it or get it to hog farms or turn it into energy in a couple of cities. So it was like we were standing as a food waste management company. And then the thing customers started saying to us is like, oh, well, what about pallets? You guys take the pallets because all our food comes on pallets. Or what about plastic bottles? We're recycling those. But they loved our technology and being able to see all their diversion. And so we built that into where now if they recycle glass, they can put the pounds of glass that they recycle, or they can upload their recycling bill, and our platform will show them what's going to glass recycling, what's going to what's being recycled from cardboard, and still give them this sustainability data, which was never in the plan. Like I never was even thinking about anything other than food. And so throughout the journey, you learn from your customers and then you start adding on more services. And so, at scale, in 10 years, who knows, Gooder could be like a waste management, but just take nothing to landfill. You know, I think Amazon started with books.
Yeah.
I always think about that, you know, Gooder started with food waste, but we don't have to end at food waste.
Yeah.
We could get all waste at some point.
That's good.
Can I make a point around the learning part of it? And I think how students could take learning and create a competitive advantage for themselves. So Jasmine eloquently talked about how she's still learning, how they're still learning, how they will continue to learn to grow big. What I've seen, and I think evidence backs us up, and other people here will back me up here, is that typically successful people are lifelong learners. They always want to get better. They're always interested in learning something. It really doesn't even matter the topic. So as a student, here's how you can utilize what successful people like, which is learning, and use it to make connections that matter, right? Students that are in college right now, I think are probably the most well-positioned ever in the world's history, human beings' history, as being unique. Coming up in the culture that we've grown up in during the pandemic. So the insights that current students have, like this current generation has really never been seen before. When you combine, again, the pandemic, when you combine technology and things of that nature. And so what students can do is say, you know what, coming out of the pandemic, really in 2022, here's what I'm seeing relative to my generation, who's grown up with nothing but the internet and technology, whose formative years have been during the global pandemic. Here's how my generation is looking at the world now, right? And so when you put it in that way, like you can talk to people that are much older or have more money or do whatever, and you're now on a level playing field, because now we're learning, like, you know what? I can't relate to it. I didn't grow up, you know, with the internet. The internet didn't really come into fruition, you know, really like toward the end of my senior year of high school. I didn't grow up on the phone. I didn't grow up on social media. And my experience in the pandemic has been as an adult, you know, living off in a neighborhood and stuff like that.
Right.
And so you position yourself as a student that way. Now I'm learning, like, you're the teacher, I'm the student, and we understand how dynamics between teachers and students are. And so, you know, building relationships that way, where the students now turning to the teacher, can lead to some immediate rewards, but also lifelong things like mentorship and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's important, mentorship, right? When we talk about creating this space, right? Students are coming in. How can you really take advantage of the opportunity to connect with other students who are also sharing their ideas, but not feeling like, oh, well, it's going to be a Facebook situation and you're going to take my idea, right? We want to be able to create a space where students can, you know, connect and to share, but still be propelled to do what they need to do. Like, how do you, what's the line between?
I feel like if you think you have an idea that's really important, then you should protect it, you know? So
Yeah.
just really, you know, buy the domain, do the simple things. Like if you know, if you have this idea, like just get started. I remember I still own a lot of domains, but there was a time when I just would have so many ideas and I would just go to GoDaddy and buy the domain. And I have a friend that must own thousands of domains. It's like that's his whole thing, and he's sold them. I mean, he owned Coca-Cola Foundation randomly, like, because he just got it. Like,
Wow.
I ended up selling it to them. He actually is the founder of allhiphop.com, which was his first domain he ever purchased. And All Hip Hop has been around for a very long time, but Grouchy is just super into domains. But I think, you know, the reality is people steal ideas. So I don't ever want to give people advice to say like, oh, just share everything and no one's going to steal your idea.
Yeah.
The truth is people can. So I think, and there's always competition. So there's always someone who's thinking of the same thing. If I had $1 probably for everybody who has written me via social media or email and said, I thought of this idea, I thought about what you're doing with Gooder, and I'm so happy to see it being done, but I probably get a couple of those emails every single week, whether it's especially if there's like a PR story that goes out, everybody has the idea. So I think from a mentorship standpoint, what I would say is if someone is willing to mentor you, always come to the table with how you're moving forward and knowing the questions that you have and how they can help you. I think that's the big thing. And that's one of the things that, you know, even Joey said, but just other mentors of mine have said, like, Jasmine used to always, when we would meet, you would come back and be like, you know what, you told me to try A, B, C, and D. I did A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and this is what I found. And this is what I'm doing again. So just being able to kind of make the mentors, you know, help you essentially. I think a lot of people ask me for mentorship and I'll be like, sure, like I'll meet with you. And they'll just be like, how did you do what you did? And that's not mentorship, right? Mentorship is, I have this idea. These are the roadblocks that I'm having. How could you help me navigate these? Or how did you navigate these challenges before? But it's not so much like just, Joey, can you tell me how you started digital guest list? Like that's not going to help you from a mentorship standpoint. What are you doing? And then how can I help you navigate the challenges that you have? That's how I think people should approach mentorship, as opposed to, listen, I've had people say that I'm their mentor in their head, you know, and I mean, I'm like, wow, I've never met these people, but that's really cool. Now I'm like, I need to have mentors in my head. There's people I never will meet, but Phyllis Newhouse is one. Janice Bryant, Ryan Hayward is one. And I had a chance to meet both of them over the weekend. And these are both women that are helming billion-dollar companies. And I had never met them before, but in many ways, I was thinking about how they made these things happen for themselves and like what I could learn from it. And, you know, they may not remember me, but just listening to them on stage was mentorship to me.
Yeah,
And that's what I think people, like your professors could be mentors.
absolutely. How do you?
We have about 20 more minutes.
Okay.
And we actually have the two of our Dell ambassadors who would like to ask a couple of questions.
Oh,
So
cool.
if you can find a spot for them to ask a question or two, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, we can go right to them and ask a
Okay,
question.
great. Come on over to that hot seat right here. Introduce yourself as well.
Well, hi, everyone. I am Shanasia Rogers. I'm a senior undergrad at Clark Atlanta University, and I major in business administration with a double concentration in finance and management. And my question for you is, thank you for bringing like the Innovation Lab to Clark, but what would be the next step for like the Black community getting more involved in technology and having more exposure to it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that when they told me that they were building the innovation lab, I connected them to Joey, because I think it's one thing to have an innovation lab, but it's another thing to have an ideation lab. Like, okay, you have ideas now, how do we actually put them into action?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's next. And I'm pretty sure Joey is working on, I'm not sure what's going to happen with how the pandemic probably put us behind, but I'm pretty sure there will be some kind of ideation sessions to help people think through the students, especially think through ideas that you may have for your business or for business ideas. The other thing that I also would, just promote and hope is I also think there's a lot of value in being part of a really big company and being, I think a lot is to be said about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is really hard. And Joe, you'll probably agree with me, my partner is not an entrepreneur. And I really love that because, there are days that I'm like, I don't know how we're good. Like if I have to cut my payroll, I'm glad you can handle this. So don't let the world ever think that it's only about like entrepreneurs and being your own bosses, because there a few of them are really successful. So I think one thing that we can do is try and get more companies over here, like the Dells, like the Home Depots, they have opportunities for students to advance, because there's a big opportunity there. There's, people, there's definitely, let's just put it like this, there's definitely a lot of employees that make more than me as an entrepreneur, and we got to start saying that. There's definitely people that work at Google, work at Facebook, work at Dell that make more than I do. And so, yeah, I maybe get to create my own schedule, but I probably work a lot more. And there's pros and cons with entrepreneurship. So I think it's about ideating around the business ideas that people have, but then also I think it'll be important to bring companies here to talk about how can you bring an idea within a company. A lot of people know this, but the founder of Zoom was formerly at Cisco, right? And he was telling the people, if you read his story, it's really great. He had the idea for Zoom at Cisco, and they had WebEx, and they were like, no, now WebEx kind of tried to get like Zoom, but he was an employee that then became an entrepreneur. And I think that's the path that a lot of people are trying to skip nowadays, that you just go from undergrad to entrepreneur, and it can be really hard. So I would hope that we could bring some companies here like Dell that are hiring, they have interns, internships, because look at how Joey got started. Even though he became an entrepreneur, it was through these internships that he started to get this experience and these ideas.
And Joe, if you want to touch base on it too.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, in the future, I see a world where one, Clark Atlanta recent graduates who are in the innovation space, whether they own their own company or they work for someone else in tech, like this is a must fall through spot. You come back to Atlanta, if you're not already living here, you come back for homecoming or a football game or just to visit some friends, you gotta come here. Like literally, you come in this space, like you roll up on campus, and I'm assuming you get through or whatever, but you know, like you come and you check in, like you open the door and there's students in here working. Really, no matter time of day or night, right? You can come in here, there's students working, they're ideating, they're innovating and stuff like that. I see a world where that happening. I also see a world where this space is connected to the larger Atlanta Black tech community. And so where we're having entrepreneurs, again, of all ages coming through, teaching a course, maybe it's a 2-week sprint, right? On some things that they're working on, helping to complement the staff here at Clark, sharing their knowledge. It's not just guest speakers. Guest speakers are awesome, where they're coming there and you're teaching what they're working, if they're teaching what they're working on in, 1 or 2, 3 week sprints would be awesome. They're coming here for even deeper engagement and deeper mentorship and stuff like that. And then also you host office hours. I think you could set up a day to where members of the Atlanta Black tech community are working out of here. Maybe it's a Friday. I can see this desk right here, they're working, they're talking with each other. Students roll in with a question, yo, I got this, blah, 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 and they give some answers and go from there, right?
I would also say too, it would be dope if a lot of these students can work within the Atlanta Black tech ecosystem. I want to add to, it doesn't always have to be the biggest companies, right? Because they maybe don't have all the jobs to hire everybody, but there are, like Gooder is going to be hiring probably for 30 more roles within the next year. There are employees, we're going to be looking for employees, we're going to be looking for students. So maybe there's a way where in addition to office hours, are there like job fairs, or just come and learn about this company that's part of the Atlanta Black tech ecosystem that's hiring. And students can just kind of come through and learn about that as well.
Yeah, no.
I think that'd be great.
There it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Hello. Good evening, you guys. My name is Jada Falby. I am also a senior. I am majoring in business administration, concentrating in finance, and minoring in speech communications. I had the pleasure of interning with Dell over the summer. And my question is really about how can we as HBCU students, and I honestly want to get a little bit more deep into you guys' personal lives, if you don't mind. but like, what was the biggest tip one of your mentors gave you, either while you were building your business, while you were, coming in, graduating, anything like that we could really use to, like a little nugget, I would say.
So like what a real mentor gave me, I'll give you two. My mentor in my head at one point was Oprah, and she had a book called What I Know For Sure. And she has a book called What I Know For Sure. And one of the things that she spoke about was that just like joy will come in the morning. And I think that's so important because there were a lot of times, especially when I was first getting started, and as I mentioned, coming out of a bad relationship, just really struggling, that I just didn't know how things were going to happen. Cried myself to sleep a lot of nights just because of the struggle, and just realizing that like joy will come in the morning, I think is just something I always tell myself. So I think that's important. No matter how bad things get, tomorrow's a new day and it's a new opportunity. And I think that's something, what one of my mentors told me is to always plan your work and then work your plan. And I think that a lot of people have great ideas, but they lack execution. And I really think that what has made all the difference in my company being successful is that I always execute on every idea that I have. So if it's like I'm gonna do A, B, C, and D. I didn't like plan it out. This is my to-do list. I'm someone who, you can use your notes in your phone, or you can write it down, but just making a plan and then working that plan. So it's like you're crossing things off as you do them. That was probably the best advice that I ever got from one of my professors in school, who was also my mentor. Just plan your work your plan.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that. I mean, some of the best advice I've ever received is, and even going back to the question around students copying your idea and stuff like that is, generally speaking, ideas are worthless. The only thing that matters is execution. Like, even if someone has your idea, like, as long as you can out execute them, it doesn't really matter. Generally speaking, it doesn't really matter, right? So again, ideas are worthless. The second would be around, if you want to become a better student, you want to learn, you want to get mentorship, turn into a teacher or turn into a mentor. So one of the easiest ways you could do that is developing a habit which turns into a culture of asking people how you can help them. So it's interesting when you start doing networking and things of that nature, how much is really built into, like, how much of our actual culture, and I don't know if it's Western culture or not, is really built into on two things. One, what people do for a living, and then two, like, how much they can extract from you. So for example, I was a part of a group called House of Genius, and they have this this rule at the beginning of the events where when you're doing networking, you cannot in any way, shape, or form say who you work for, your role, or even hint at it. So it's really interesting when you start making conversations with people, like, you can't say who you work for, like, what do you actually say? You can't even, like, again, try to hint at it. And so when you can't say that, people, they can't figure out a way to get something from you. That's really what people are trying to do, even in a subconscious way. So what I would say to you is, instead of trying to figure out how you can get something from someone, try to figure out how you can pour into them and simply say, again, how can I help? You'll be shocked about people will actually, in many cases, I think in particular for diverse culture, they may not even believe you actually want to help them out. But if you're authentic with it, eventually it'll catch on. And then you'll actually develop an interesting habit and a culture around it. You'll start to understand how people think in terms of what they can and what they want, and then actively try to actually make it happen. So if you ask someone, how can I help? And they rattle off a few different things, just try to do one. Spend 30 minutes, try to do it, and then you'll become a better student in the process.
Thank y'all. Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, so we are living in a digital age. Both of you guys are really tech people. How do you see, like, social media playing a role further down the line in your businesses? And also, how do you think that we should use social media and use, like, pushing businesses and things like that? Because that's the age that we are living in.
It's interesting. I think social media is going to be important, but I don't think businesses should solely rely on it. And I think maybe a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, I remember Instagram was down and people were like on Twitter and everyone was talking about it. But there are so many businesses and so many, like, brands, even people, right? They have 1 million followers on Instagram, but outside of Instagram have no, they're not on Twitter, they're not connected. And so I think that's important, right? Because the reality is I grew up in a time where, like, MySpace was really big. And I'm pretty sure there are people who were, like, huge on MySpace, but if they didn't translate that brand presence that they had on MySpace to other networks, they really lost it. I know a promoter who had a really big following on MySpace. And then because he didn't get anybody's email addresses, because he didn't connect with them outside of that, after MySpace died, he wasn't able to really get people to the clubs anymore, because it was like, oh, how do I connect with him? So I think it's important that you also think about text campaigns, email marketing, and then still not losing, like, the face-to-face, whether that's Zoom, just to connect with people. But I think social media is huge. There is definitely value in it. I personally, if I had to rank, of the big four, I probably think LinkedIn and Twitter have brought me much more value as far as connections than Facebook and Instagram. But I also am not a CPG product. I'm not selling something to individuals, where I think if I was selling a product, I think Facebook and Instagram are better. If I'm doing business deals and trying to talk to enterprise companies, Twitter and LinkedIn are better for that, in my opinion. But Joey's may be different. I do think it's gonna grow, and I think we're gonna see another social media like giant. I don't think I could be wrong, but my prediction is in 5 or 10 years, it's maybe not Facebook or Instagram. Maybe, who knows, TikTok could become the big one, even though it's really confusing to me. I tried to put a TikTok together for my daughter, and I was like, this is not gonna be for me. Like TikToks and Reels, I guess for me, it just takes too much time, and I'm too busy now. But just, I think I used to be that person. If there was this new social network, I remember when Google Plus came out. No, I probably get some ridiculous, but I was like, I'll be on Google Plus. Like, and I used to have all the social networks on my business cards, and now I don't even do business cards. So like, I think the world is just getting to be more of a digital place, and it's changing, but just be well-rounded and not just only on social media. I think it's more important if people know you, if they pass you by, than just knowing you on social media.
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the day, content creation, right, is the thing, which I think here at Clark, you all are well positioned for. We just had one of the world's largest companies change their name. You look at the direction in which what they seem to be going in. You think about digital content, digital assets. So metaverse, think things around crypto. And so, what is the intersection of crypto, content, metaverse? I mean, even so, the shoes I have on right now, first time I wore them. Reality is, this is so awkward. So I'm sorry. During the pandemic, picked up video games and kind of wasted time, right? My wife is like, this is your new best friend. I hate this. But you on NBA 2K, you can like put new shoes on players. I have these Kobe's that actually discontinued. So I can't go, but I had to go to like a reseller on Go, pay over $500 for these sneakers. To be absolutely clear, I put some digital sneakers on a player on a video game. It caused me then want the sneakers in real life and pay over $500, right? Ridiculous, right? But that is the future. So you think about digital content, digital assets, like, and where is it going moving forward? AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, things of that nature. Like the intersection of content creation, metaverse, crypto, and things like that are going to be an interesting trend to track over the next decade.
Yeah, John, I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because it leads us right into my final question, which is going to be, let me figure out how I wanted to word this. So we're all, well, at least us here, and what kind of, this is the business school that you kind of presenting to today. So how do you think that us as business majors, marketing, finance, accounting, what are some things that we could be doing to better position ourselves for involvement in blockchain and cryptocurrency? Because, finance is extremely manual, but we see that it's moving more into like robotic process automation and things like that. So, and it's things that we have to learn. So what are some things that you guys would recommend for us in the space?
Yeah, I think if I can go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, just take again in the past 18 or so, 24 months with the pandemic and how fast things have happened. Just so much stuff has happened over the, since we've gone kind of shelter in place. It's kind of difficult to really grasp it all. But think about how fast people jumped on crypto, right? And so you saw people of all types jumping on crypto, all these various coins, going to the moon, so on and so forth. And so I think one thing you could be doing is just really educating yourself, and just try to buy a little bit. I think you can buy some on some of the apps like Robinhood and Cash App and so on and so forth. Just put a little bit toward it and get some experience in it. Play with it a little bit, right? Things like NFT as well. So it may look different in the next 5 or so years, but learning how to recognize it. So the thing I'm coming up with here is learning how to recognize a trend and knowing where to jump into the communities that are actually sharing knowledge around these trends, and then play around with it a little bit. If we've learned nothing else from the pandemic, is that information is a privilege. So think back when the pandemic first jumped off. Everybody knew somebody on the inside who could give you some information about what was about to happen. Oh, the National Guard's about to come in, food's about to run out, so on and so forth. Like, that's when I realized, like if this was like zombie apocalypse type stuff, like World War Z, like when you have like 30 minutes in the difference of life and death, and to be clear, this pandemic has been absolutely horrible, right? But it's not like zombie apocalypse horrible. It's really bad. 30 minutes, an hour could save your life. Like getting advance notice on something could save your life, right? And so information is a privilege. And knowing where to go for some of these innovative kind of cutting edge ideas is going to make the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And so jump on it now so you can be on the right side of that fence.
Yeah, and play with it. I mean, I think back to maybe 5-10 years ago, I definitely was meeting people that are like, yeah, I just buy and exchange Bitcoin. And I think back like, boy, they must be, if they stuck to it, they probably were really well off. So again, just like sometimes people grow into be bigger than, the little nobody that someone will treat you to be, one of those coins could tomorrow explode, So I think to Joey's point, maybe just test it out and see what works, see what happens. But it's out there and it's changing.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're getting close to time. No, you're fine. You're fine.
In Illinois, it's like 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Definitely you're from New York.
You can hear it. Yeah, you can hear it. So leave us with one key thing. What would you leave our students and our guest audience with? One key point.
You want to go first, Joey?
I would say build who you are. Just build who you are, which means, and I'm trying to keep this short, which means you have to know who you are, right? You're students, you're young, you're still learning who you are as a human. In your 20s when you do the most learning, so at least theoretically, it was for me, feeling a lot of my friends. You're learning who you are, but that also means that you can do a few things that some older people have a little bit of a harder time with. What I've learned in teaching design, thinking human-centered approaches to innovation is that really people in the 4th and 5th grade, usually for the most part, it really represents who you are as a human. So think back to 4th and 5th grade, for the most part, depending on how your school was and different, home situations, is the part where you're not in middle school. So you don't have the pressure of being like you're not trying to impress 7th and 8th graders, and you're not really at an age where the pressures of trying to impress a whole bunch of people are upon you, but you're at the top of the chain when it comes to elementary school. So those are really what you're like. And so if you can think back to the way you were when you were in 4th and 5th grade, you close that door maybe in your room and just be free. That's who you are. Get back to knowing that human being, whatever age 4th and 5th grade is, and then express that person in what you do on a daily basis.
I heard something over the weekend that I thought was really great, and I just believe this with everybody, but it's a quote that says, never compromise who you are personally for who you want to be professionally. And I think that's just something really that I would encourage students to carry with them. We can have really big, audacious goals and we want to do great things, but just don't compromise your core values to get there.
That's good. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tiffany, for a well-run webinar. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Joey. This is so exciting because this is kind of what I do. I run as the dean of the business school now, but what I've done in my life aligns with the kinds of things you're talking about. I'm a techie, and I love to hear what you've done with it. So this is so exciting to me. I really appreciate you all taking the time to spend with us. This space that has been created is exactly as you described it, Joe. The vision that I have for this space is that at some point, this should be open 24/7. This should be where ideas come, this ideation space. And we have just begun. We have just begun. We are going to call on all of you on a regular basis to help us work this and get the students to get excited as you've been. You've been successful because of the level of excitement that you have for moving ideas forward. So I really, really thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much. And to our audience out there, I want to say thank you to all who have tuned in this evening. This has been extremely exciting for me. And I look forward to future opportunities. As I indicated before, we have a year-long celebration of our anniversary. And in that period, we will have a number of forums like this. I will invite everyone to be part of that forum. We have a theme that we've developed for this year of reflecting forward. And that theme speaks to the things that we aim to do, which is to honor our past, to elevate our present, and to envision the future. This is part of the future that we envision. So thank you so much to our moderator. Thank you to the panelists and to all of you out there who tuned in. Thank you so very much. Everyone have a good evening.